well. Take care of yourself. Um, just give me a moment, please. I think she's having some trouble logging in. Subiksha, is there a way that you can please? I'm unable to add her online for some strange reason. I just sent her an invitation. There. Hi, Jyotsna.
Do you see it?
Yes, ma'am, could you shift your camera to a vertical angle, please? Is that possible?
You want me to do it
Yes.
this way?
Yes, this is good.
Is it better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
1 second. I just want to adjust it a little bit.
Absolutely. Please take your time. Hi, Meera.
Okay. Yeah, this is
Okay,
yes,
so
okay. Good.
yeah, all right.
Yes.
Okay. Super. So, good evening and welcome to Lockdown with Weekend. This is a series by the Hindu Weekend, and we're very excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you for making time for this in a medium that is probably fairly unfamiliar to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But nice to be here and nice to know that there are so many people going to be watching this and that we're going to be talking dance. Wonderful.
Absolutely. Just today, I was thinking about our interview that, that I had the opportunity of interviewing you for Aalaap's Cues, a really fairly long interview. And I revisited that this morning. And there's one particular paragraph that really struck me. And I'm going to just read it out for the benefit of those who are listening in today. You talked to me about the idea of wonderment, and you said, I'm really thankful that my heart responds to wonderment, to the champa tree outside my home. Every time I come back home from a trip, I caress my tree as I would meet a friend. I'm deeply thankful to all the poets who've written some amazing poetry. I think of the Alvars and the Nayanmars, of what they have written and what they have seen. It is only through their vision that I get a glimpse of the yearning of the beloved for the Supreme. For allowing me this entry into their world, I'm grateful. Grateful to classical dance. Dance and I now walk side by side as trusted companions. I thought this was absolutely beautiful. And just for the benefit of those who may be unfamiliar with, your resume, so to speak, I'm just going to read an excerpt from the bio you shared with me this morning as well. Malavika Sarukkai, for those who don't know, is a passionate, path-breaking artist from India and has contributed a significant and large body of work in solo and group choreographies, making her mark as one who imaginatively reworks tradition. Committed to an internalized creative dance process, her choreographies embody originality, intelligence, mastery of technique, and a vitalized movement vocabulary to inventively relate the world of dance to the world around us. A film titled Unseen Sequence, directed by eminent filmmaker Shumantra Ghoshal, has been made celebrating her distinctive, intellectual, and path-breaking approach to dance. Her latest dance creation that premiered in Bangalore, The Battle Within, is a dramatic interpretation inspired by the Bhagavad Gita and has received an overwhelming response. She's also the recipient of several awards and accolades. Malavika ji, today our conversation is centered around your journey as a solo artist. And I know that 1 hour is not enough to speak about it, but I have tried to kind of attempt to capture the essence of, what may be useful to the people who are listening in. So I'm going to start off directly by asking you this question. You know, when I think of the word solo, I also think of the word singular for some strange reason. And then I think of how your journey has sort of been uh, the singular pursuit of excellence. And you've almost done it solo. I really want to understand and get your take on the word solo and your understanding of the word singular.
Actually, Akhila, when I started dancing and I was really little, I was a little girl, and I don't know if I can call it solo in a sense, because my mother was always with me. She was a kind of a great motivating factor, support, very passionate about it. So in a sense, I dance solo, obviously, for the last, I think, 5 decades. But I've always had this person who was supporting me, except for the last so many years when she passed away. So it was, I think, I didn't really know what I was embarking on when I started dancing. And I didn't know the meaning of solo either. At 7 and 10 and 12, you don't know what you're actually going in for. But as life went on and as I kind of, you know, as I was sort of pulled into dancing, you know, at that time I realized that yes, solo is what I wanted. So solo was sort of a defining category of saying I dance by myself in that sense, of being solo. And I knew that I wasn't really, uh, I don't think I would have fitted into group dancing as such or ensemble work. It never crossed my mind. I never really even exercised my mind about what it could be. And frankly, 50 years ago, there were more soloists. I mean, people danced Bharatanatyam and we went solo. But of course, times have changed. Now we see a
Absolutely.
very different direction to dance, which perhaps we can speak about later.
Right.
And so it became a singular focus, but it wasn't something which was a target. It wasn't a place I had to get to. There were no milestones I had to, I had to reach at a certain time in my life. But you could look at it like a long and winding road, perhaps, a journey. Uh, and it happened that, this sort of passion for dancing, it was, I don't know, I just let it happen. It wasn't thought of, it wasn't a conscious decision. And my mother was so devoted to dance and classical dance, and she believed so much uh, about the intrinsic quality of classical dance that she also never gave me any targets. So it was only like dance because you enjoy it. So it became,
Yeah.
I think, a singular passion, and I'm so thankful. I am so
Right.
thankful. I couldn't have done anything else. Sometimes people
Yeah.
ask me, what would you have done if you're not a dancer? And
Yeah.
then I don't know. I don't know what I would have done, because dance is really something I'm not only in love with, but I'm so grateful to. It has just
Right.
changed the way we look at life. So yes, so it is a
Wow.
singular passion.
Right. Um, so, by virtue of sort of this singular pursuit, how has your relationship with dance evolved over the years? I'm curious about, would you think of dance as a partner? You talked to me about trusted companion.
Mhm.
And, do you say that now after many years, or has it always been a trusted companion?
Oh no, I couldn't take that liberty at all with it in the initial years. I think as a
Hmm.
student, as a young student of dance, it was a stranger. It was so strange and it was so far away. And it was something I couldn't really, befriend almost. So I think the first 10 years were looking at it from a distance and kind of, trying to get close to it. But in my 20s, I think it became much more of a friend. But one had to be cautious with it. I couldn't kind of embrace my dancing because I didn't have that confidence, or I didn't have that ease with it. So it took many years of maturing with it. Also, having my personal dialogue with it, a very intimate. It's very intimate because it's not that I speak about it to anybody. I wouldn't even have spoken about it to my mother, who was perhaps who knew my heartbeat like nobody
Yeah.
else. Yeah, but yeah, it was, I think, with all these very intimate, private conversations that I eased towards it, and I befriended it and made it more a friend, and then of course a companion, because when it becomes a companion, you turn to it at different stages of your life. It ceases to be just a performance that we do and just the applause or the accolades of performance, which is one part of it. But there are very many private moments and, intensely personal moments of life itself, when life is swinging you right and left and up and down, and it's
Mm.
not it's not an easy passage at all. And then I would go to my trusted friend and I would dance. And when I danced, I would feel somewhere a certain comfort that I am like, or responding to other energies, other qualities in my own being, and it gives you a sense of stability. So that sense of a good friend. And, later on, I think as we mature and we see so much of life and we experience life, it becomes a companion, someone, you could rely on, someone who walks with you shoulder to shoulder. So I think now dance is, we're really wonderful friends and companions. And
Wow.
yes,
Yeah.
it's a long journey, but it's been tremendous because it's changed me as a person, for which I'm very
Right.
thankful.
Right. Ma'am, a trusted friend is often somebody who also shows you the mirror, right? How has dance, have you looked at dance like that? Has it often been a sort of a sort of an honest friend that tells you things the way it is? I mean, and sometimes really actually shows you the mirror.
I think when you dance, as a matter of fact, you see so many parts of yourself, or you see yourself like you otherwise don't. Because in that sense, it makes you very vulnerable. It makes you very vulnerable. And initially, vulnerability is something to, back off from. You say, oh, no, I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
find myself so vulnerable. And later on, you find with time spent with it, that actually it's a strength. It's a strength to be vulnerable. It's not a weakness to be vulnerable. It's not a weakness. You need a whole lot of security in yourself for the kind of person you are, to say, okay, I can be vulnerable. And I think with dance, you also, it shows up other, aspects of yourself, because it's so intensely something which looks within, or so I imagine. And I think classical dance, and at least in my experience, it's been something which is constantly making you look within rather than looking out. In that sense, also a mirror, because it doesn't, it's not about just the external, but it's very much about the internal space. So yes, it does teach one a lot. And, sometimes you see, uh, you know, things about yourself, perhaps, which you didn't even acknowledge.
Right. would you also think that vulnerability as a quality is also essential for an artist? And would you also think that it's something that we kind of also grow into? Because, sometimes um, we are a bit inhibited in our 20s. In our 30s, we are kind of looking for something. We come into, some people say in our 40s, some people say in our 50s. But do you also
Yeah.
think that being able to, actually be vulnerable and that also sort of takes some growing into, right?
I think so too. I think very much because, it's easier to have a mask about how you look, how you're perceived, what your image is on stage. I'm saying for in the performing arts. And I remember the first time I felt so vulnerable in front of an audience was I was doing some composition, but I remember closing my eyes. I remember I would just close my eyes and I was in my own world of feeling. And closing my eyes, especially as a classical dancer, an artist, it's not something we really can do often. Musicians have much more, should I say, the saukyam of being in their own world when they can
Yeah,
close their
yeah,
eyes and,
correct.
and sing.
Dancers
But
don't have that.
dancers don't have that,
Potentially, yeah,
that gift of being able to do it.
yeah.
But I feel that somewhere closing my eyes to the audience actually made me vulnerable because I could not hold them with with my sight, and I was just expressing myself with my body, and I had to close my eyes. So that gave me my first sort of, should I say, moment of vulnerability. But later
Mm,
on, you realize, there are emotions which make you vulnerable, different choices. But I think, being vulnerable allows you to express something perhaps even beyond your very conditioned self.
mm,
Because very often we like to live within the conditioned world of emotions.
yeah, yeah,
It's a kind of security and it's comfort
yeah,
because we know how to move around, we know what to say. But
yeah.
vulnerability takes you just that
Sharing.
bit away. Yeah,
Yeah,
it takes you away. And actually, you feel sometimes you're in unknown territory.
right.
But with allowing yourself, you gain strength. And I do believe that when you hit vulnerability really deeply, it gives you freedom. It gives you freedom.
Yeah, that's
You,
that's
you know,
really so beautiful. Yeah,
because then you're not worried about
worried
yourself.
about. Yeah, yeah,
You're willing to say, okay, I just let go. But this is me today. This is the moment. So yes, but it takes courage. It's
yeah.
easier to dance with the masks of various things. Yes.
Right. Just going to take a moment to ask Radhika, are you able to hear ma'am clearly? Also, is there some kind of a lag in her video? Can one of you just give me a thumbs up if everything's okay? All right. Okay. Thank you. Um, so my next question is, I know that a lot of dancers are listening to this conversation. I'd like
Okay.
for you to, talk about what are some of the key aspects that a solo artist must be truly conscious of and sensitive about when it comes to both practice and to performance.
Hmm, I think practice and performance can't be, they can't be at two different levels. practice,
Okay.
what we practice is what we should be performing. It can't be practice at another level and performance at another level, because we can't tell ourselves, okay, we'll up it for performance. I think practicing with everything you have, with full energy, full attention, whatever you have that particular day, is, I think that is critical to, enhancing one's own overall standard of performance. Also, I believe, if we're able to practice at, say, at least 90%, 100%, I would say like we should push for 100%.
Yes.
So that when we get on stage, and there are so many variables, there's so many things which are happening, not happening, should be happening, could be happening, should have happened. We get on stage with a
Right,
lot
right.
of tension. Now, I feel if you've already got so much level of practice and comfort with our compositions, then we're able to take on the variables with better ease and primarily enjoy the dancing more. If one wants to really enjoy dancing, one has to have some sense of fluidity or some sense of ease with the dancing. So I think I would say practice should be at the same level of performance. And every practice, not today's practice and 2 days practice goes down, but I'm saying every time a dancer is practicing, I think we need to get the full flow of all the whole composition, not to do it in small bits, to run the whole piece, to pick up one's stamina, and to say how far can we go with that level of trust, and discipline, I think, is very important for dancers. And sometimes everyone is not disciplined. I was not very disciplined myself, but I just realized if I wanted to be focused, I had to be disciplined. If I wanted to be like, have time and energy to think of other things, I had to make sure that everything in my dance suitcase was in its proper place. So
Right.
I never allow anybody, even now, to pack my suitcase. I would do it myself. Every piece of jewelry has to be in its particular place. And this, you kind of, you kind of pick this up on this long journey at some point, and you say, this amount of meticulousness is necessary. And overall, I found that, patience is something else we need.
Yeah.
Nowadays, especially when we have long technical run-throughs, one has to have tremendous patience to go
Waiting,
through.
right? Yeah.
And also that we can't sort of up the performance level 1 week before a performance. It's too late. We need to do it like 1 month before a performance. So the last 1 month is just put into just living it, and living it. So that when you get on stage, you're like full, all the engines are like running, your body is humming, your body is like an instrument, and it just wants to go, go, go. So there is a lot of hard work, which happens before we're actually able to get to that state. And yes, but I think, without discipline, you can't find freedom.
Absolutely.
Without hard work, you can't find effortlessness. It doesn't drop into your life. You make it happen. It's like a sports person, it's an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to train hard. So I think, if we dancers are able to raise the bar, I keep talking about it because I feel it's so important for us to take dance further than we thought we could. I think that should be an attempt. It's trial and error. So I think we need to make that attempt.
Right. sort of constant pursuit, right? That you often speak about, sort of.
Constant pursuit. And, these things are not taught to you. When you go into dancing, you don't know these things. But on the way, you also learn that on the way, you have to be a leader. Leadership qualities becomes again important.
Yeah, that's a
Becomes
really
important.
interesting point. Yeah.
It becomes important because you realize that, if you raise the bar, you make others also raise the bar.
Also.
So in rehearsal, I would ask dancers, raise the bar in the way you perform. So the musicians as well are inspired to raise their bar. And then everybody enjoys it more because everybody is performing at higher dance and music level. You learn leadership qualities when you say you're doing a huge production and things are going wrong on your technical run through. And then you realize you have to be the person who is like centered, who's holding everybody in place, who's not losing the temper, who's
Yeah.
not showing it. You might be losing the temper, but
At
you
least,
can't
yeah.
afford to.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
definitely lose the temper. You
That's true.
absolutely,
Yeah.
dance and rave, but you can't. So there are these qualities which, it just aggregates as you go further and further into, more performances and more professional level of performance. So it's a constant learning. It's
Wow.
constant learning.
Yeah. In fact, my next question was really about, sometimes the journey of a solo artist can also be very, very lonely, right? Because, in management, you speak about the good cop and the bad cop, and you have to be both at the same time sometimes because you have to also talk finances, you have to manage a team, you have to kind of hold it all together. And like you rightly said, at least pretend to hold it all together without kind of losing it. Have you sort of experienced these bouts of loneliness along your journey as a solo artist?
In the initial years, I didn't feel that so much because, my mother was there and she took took a whole lot of responsibility, which she handled. And so it was unspoken, but completely understood that there were certain things which were my portfolio. And there were
Division
certain
of role.
things, yeah, and we were very professional about it. So I would give her space, she gave me space. And so it was much easier. And I think the world of dancing was also, and the programs and stuff like that, which we did, wasn't as sort of complex as it's getting now. So in a
Yeah.
sense, it was easier, 30 years ago to manage one's
Yeah.
dance, programs. But otherwise, it does get, you know, not only lonely, but I think it gets very demanding because of the multitasking we have to do. And,
For
there are
sure.
just times when I just want to be in my dance studio. All I want to do is my practice. And instead, I'm having to do emails and answer all kinds of questions which are coming from, even though my secretary does a lot of the work, but yet there's the overseeing
Yeah.
of things we have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. For sure.
I find multitasking really, it's really hard on artists who want to just like be with their disciplines and who want to, if you're invested in the dance itself, it's very difficult to be invested in the outside world and all the things that are happening. So there is, I think there's a conscious decision, at least I have taken, of saying, how much will I invest in the outside world, of being outside, and how much will I do for spending my time for more creative work? For example, I'm not on Facebook and I'm not on Instagram. Yeah, now
Kudos to you.
that's a conscious decision because I know it's also wonderful for people to connect and it's great because there's so much conversation. I'm sure there's a lot of fun in it. I'm really sure that people, well, in doses perhaps, in some like little doses. But I have chosen to be out of it because I feel I can't give so much time to it. So it's a conscious decision of not to do it. But yeah,
Right.
multitasking, I think these days is very difficult. Not having agents in India, not having an organized professional setup for professionals is very, very difficult.
Difficult.
I don't know when we're
Absolutely.
going to have arts administration, which will really, uh, you know, sort of make it that much more organized in this
Mm,
very disorganized sector. It is chaotic.
absolutely.
Yeah, the dance
Yeah, I
scene
know.
is
Yeah,
chaotic, and
for sure.
we
Yeah.
don't have we don't have you know we call ourselves professionals, but we don't have enough really backing. We don't have enough support. We don't have enough, you know, arts administration, which people who are helping artists. We have a long way to
Mm,
go. So now, right now, it's everyone for themselves, each individual trying to, go ahead the best way they can. It's
yeah,
difficult.
that's
It's
true.
very difficult to be a classical artist. It really
Right.
is.
um, Also, the whole idea about, it's also being a solo artist, it's also, I suppose, a hugely liberating experience. So I suppose it also brings with it a great sense of freedom to explore, discover, seek, forget, be lost, all of it. And you've shared so many powerful ideas and emotions as part of this journey. You've inhabited so many characters, the story of Timaka, the battle within, which is a very powerful idea. I'm curious about what's the shift that occurs within you by virtue of sort of inhabiting these characters, these stories, these experiences, and how have they really shaped you as a person and as a dancer?
No, that's a big question. Um, but sometime before we go on to this question, I just remembered, when you were asking about, the soloists being lonely, and the
Hmm.
image which comes to mind is, when, after the applause or the standing ovations and the bouquets, and
Yeah.
there's so many people coming and saying so many wonderful things, and it's all quite heady and stuff like that. And then when you go into the dressing room, in the silence of the dressing room,
Yeah.
when you start taking off your makeup, then you meet yourself. And I think it's a very sort of very strong and significant moment after all the characters you've inhabited. And then you take this all off,
Hmm.
and then you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, this is me. And you're just coming back to just the person you are, you know,
Hmm.
and oftentimes when we leave the dressing room, there's normally very few people outside
Yeah.
waiting for the artist. I'm sure other
Absolutely.
artists would share this. Many people have gone through this, and actually that is quite, it always sort of knocks you on the head because, the show is over, the applause is over, the curtains are down, and then, okay, so go back. It's like, okay, so now you
Over.
have to go back. Which I feel, I wish it would change because I think for artists all over the world and definitely artists from India, to have somebody, even two or three people who just make sure that the suitcase is taken and just make sure that, the car is there for the artist. I think there's a sense of, it's a much smoother exit than the very abrupt exit that we often are, you know, often have to face. And as I said, I think this would possibly be, and I've seen it with other artists too. Many of us have spoken about it. So coming back to your other question, why do I do so many different kinds of characters? Yeah, again, it wasn't conscious, it was Akhila. It wasn't something I thought of and I said, okay, so I'm going to go about doing A, B, and C.
Hmm.
Rather, it was that I had a free spirit. Again, my mother was very instrumental about saying, discover yourself. If you are risking something, risk it. You will. There's a trial and error. You will succeed sometimes, might not succeed sometimes, but doesn't matter. Risk it. You know, walk the unknown path. Walk it. Try it, because you might find something quite extraordinary, which you haven't otherwise found. So I think doing these different or interpreting these different characters was, in a sense, about inclusivity, because I felt my dance repertoire could not be contained with just the padams and javalis, which is what I inherited, which was important, and which I performed for 20 years. But it wasn't complete for me, and I needed more dimensions to it. And I was able to, experiment, experience these things, because dance was also moving from being a style to a language. As it moved into the area of a language, and as I found ease with it, it was like an explosion, because I felt, wow, I can do so many things. And I would risk it, by doing a Timmaka. I mean, people might have thought, why is she doing Timmaka? Last year when I did Timmaka, I think she got the Padma Shri last year. Then, of course, it became very relevant, because I was telling the story. But 10 years ago, she was still a very, important person, but not discovered recognized by the government of India with Padma Shri. So people might have wondered why I'm doing that. Why should I do Arjuna? Why should I do Bhagavad Gita? But it was, for me, a calling. And I think when I do these compositions or these interpretations which are outside the given margam, it's an impulse, it's a calling, it's a passionate drive which makes me go in that direction. And I think in the process, I just discover things I've never seen before. For me, Battle Within is one such production. It took me like right up mountains and dropped me right down into the cliff below. And it gave me a sense of intensity I've never, ever experienced. But for that, I had to step out and challenge myself and risk myself, and yes, but without risk, then what is life? What is dance? What is, if you just constantly are just on the tried and tested, how far can we go? And what happens, if we don't look either side? I tell dancers, when they want to learn with me, I say, it has to be an adventure. We have to walk the mountain path, because when we are walking up and down this mountain path, we never know what turn we might take and what vista we will see. So we have to be alert and alive. To seeing what we don't expect. But that means the path is longer, it's more adventure, there is more risk, there are not so many guarantees. But what you see might be just extraordinary. And for that hope of that little bit of what you might see, we have to take the long trip. Yeah, the long train. So I think for people who are who are willing to walk the long path are welcome. Are welcome. I don't want to take the arterial road in a city.
Yeah.
Point to point. No, I'm just not interested in that.
I just realized it's 9:45 already. I have
Oh,
just one more question. I have a couple of more questions, but I wanted to ask you one thing about, before I take a couple of questions from the audience, just the
sure.
idea of what happens and how does one really shed the ego on stage?
Oh, that's again a big question. But if I had to answer it very briefly, I would say, how much is the dancer willing to surrender? How much will you surrender? How much can you immerse? Because otherwise, obviously, the me is center stage. It's there, it's stating itself all the time. But if you're willing to even dislodge it just a wee bit, you experience some other quality. There is some other energy, other force, other, I think, yes, perhaps intelligence, something else which penetrates, which comes within the body and the being. It's not the body, but it's the whole being. Because dance is obviously, emotional and physical and spiritual. It's, I could say spiritual because I talk of, if for me, spiritual is alignment, it's balance, it's harmony, it's all these things which for me is spiritual. But the question is, how much is the dancer, the artist, willing to surrender? How much are you willing to give up? How much of yourself will you give up? How vulnerable can you be? Can you be vulnerable because you're seeking something else? So
Right.
it's a big question, but it's also to do with the verticals and the horizontals of dance, which is again another big subject.
Right.
Briefly,
I'm just Yeah, I'm just going to take a few questions from the audience. I mean, I think it would be unfair if I didn't do that. Um, because Instagram has a strange system, ma'am, I'm not sure you know, but at 10 p.m. sharp, we will get disconnected. So,
Oh,
I mean, if that happens, I want to actually thank you so much for, while you're speaking, I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I might have to, sort of interject while you're speaking, but thank you so much for sharing these insights so generously. I really, really, on behalf of the Hindu Weekend, appreciate that. Are there any questions? I think someone had, it's taking some time for people. So, okay, so as people, okay, let me just ask you what, you often use this word dance for dance. I think Kalavahini curates a festival, Dance for Dance. I've always been curious about dance for dance, and you often talk about, I mean, even when you talk to me, you keep talking about have to do something for dance, have to raise the bar for dance. What exactly, how did you come up with this idea of dance for dance? If you'd be able to, just sort of explain that idea.
well, it came up rather simply because, some dancers would message me or come to see me and, seek my blessings before a program. And so I would say, but dance for dance. It was just a way of saying, this is why you should dance. Because dance is greater than you and me and all of us put together. It's a much greater vision. So the best thing we could do is go out there and dance our best with everything we've got and give it everything we've got for dance itself. And I said the rest will follow. What the audience says to you, what the critics write, what your peers are saying, what your colleagues are saying, what Instagram is saying, what Facebook is saying. All that can come later.
Right.
But the primary purpose of the program is
Right.
for dance. And I think,
Right.
if you keep it that way, we just sort of give ourselves a much vaster purpose and reason to dance,
Right.
rather than get troubled by who's sitting in the audience and do they like it and they don't like it. And it can affect the dancer in so many ways, at
Right.
different points in their careers. So I say, let's not worry about all people will come and go. Dance is forever. So let
Right.
us focus on the dance. So I think that's why
Right.
dance is dance.
That
And
is
Kalavahini, our line for Kalavahini is all for dance, which is
right.
also
Oh,
dance.
okay.
Yeah, it's all for
Okay.
dance. Yes.
Right. There's
So
someone
that's
who's watching from Brazil and would like to know when you would be coming back to dance in Brazil. They say they miss you there. So
well, I would love to once this lockdown. We just want to move around once these lockdowns finish all over the world and we're all just getting back to a new normal. But yes,
right.
why not? I loved my trip to Brazil. I loved it. I really, and I met some wonderful people there in
Lovely.
Brazil.
There's also a question from Barbara. I think it's probably we may get disconnected, but she'd like to know about the verticals and the horizontals in dance. I think you spoke about that.
Mhm.
Maybe we could just you could just answer that question and we could sign off thereafter.
Okay. Yeah. I think the verticals are really about the depth, the deeper aspects of dance, which we have to go, the fundamentals, the fundamentals. I didn't speak of technique this time, but technique is absolutely critical to anything we want to do. So it is how deep and secure and stable the fundamentals are, so that the horizontals and explorations can actually take place with this sense of centeredness. And I think that's why I would use. But that's a bigger discussion because there are many points of verticals of classical dance.
Right. There's somebody who'd like to know, is dance something that you're born with, or is this a journey that's spanning across births? Kavita Pai from Singapore.
Well, I certainly think there is something which you are also born with. What you have, what genetically what you have, the vasanas which you bring from the previous birth. And then of course it's a question of what you do with it all in this birth. So a lot depends on the individual in this birth to say what can we do with it. You have talent, you have gift, but what can you do with it? So
Yeah.
I think that's the application of the now that we have to all absolutely pay heed to.
Yeah. I think that's a great point to actually sign off this conversation, because there's some things that we're born with, but it's really important what we do with it. And I think
That
that all dancers who are listening, like you rightly said, dance for dance. Thank you so much for this, generous sharing of ideas and thoughts, insights. I really enjoyed it as always. Please stay safe. Chennai is going into yet another lockdown. So I hope you've stocked up on stuff, on groceries and stuff. Please stay indoors. Please stay safe. Everybody who's listening, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much, Malavika ma'am. Really enjoyed it.
I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. Good luck to everybody, and of course, stay safe and stay creative.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.